A few years ago, a good friend of mine and someone I admired greatly said to me, Alex, there's only two things you really need to think about for the rest of your career. One is self-generative algorithms, and the second one is high-value data, because these are the things that are going to drive human progress for the next 20 to 30 years. My last company was a company called XINs here in Oxford, which used computational algorithms, self-learning algorithms, to create the molecular compounds behind new drugs and novel IP, which was fantastically successful. We took that from $30 million in Oxford and 9 people to a $2.6 billion NASDAQ IPO with 400 people with huge domain expertise, still based in Oxford. The latest company which I helped lead is called Arcturus Data. We curate and aggregate large amounts of precision human health data from a range up to 12 now partner hospitals, foundation trusts here in the UK. Delighted to say my friend who advised me was recently awarded the Nobel Prize for Chemistry for his incredible work on protein folding in all known proteins. I feel I've got some way to go to match his achievements, but I shall do my very best. I also just took a quote from someone else who I admire, Andrew Morris from HDR UK, who refers to data in healthcare as a fourth industrial revolution. And whilst that seems a lofty statement, I think there's a lot to be said for that, and we're seeing this really worldwide, and I think we're beginning to see the art of what's possible in the UK as well. Talking about the adoption of healthcare data, I just thought it'd be useful to try in our minds to think to other industries we know well, where we've seen the adoption of data, digitalization of data, the use of algorithms to improve and change industries. And if you think about the consumer industry, and this has really started since the launch of cloud infrastructure and cloud computing in 2005-06, which really drove the ability to store and analyze vast quantities of data. We know from our consumer industry experience how the use of data, the use of digitalization has fundamentally transformed an industry from pricing, from delivery, from stocking, from the whole way consumers behave every time you click, every time you transact, every time you hover. This is creating data and data knowledge to improve the service and the experience as a consumer. And it's fundamentally done two things. It's taken a vast amount of capital out of the consumer industry, and we only have to walk down a high street to know that the shops are not really required that much anymore. But secondly, it's changed the industry from being a product-centric and a platform-centric to an individually driven industry and experience. And I think that's been something that we see and are used to now as something that has been really transformed by data and data knowledge. We've even now seen this across finance. The use of data has fundamentally changed everything that we do within the finance industry, from banks to money to savings to investments to risk management. The way these are priced, the way these are transacted, the speed and how these products are tailored have all been driven by the use of data, knowledge about data. Who would have thought that most hedge funds globally today are now completely run by algorithms? Data knowledge, transaction-driven, learning from those transactions. And it's fundamentally, again, changed the industry. It's made it cheaper. It's taken a huge amount of capital out. Most high street banks have now closed down. The need for that heavy capital employment in the sector has disappeared. And again, it's changed what was a traditional face-to-face type traditional industry that is product and platform-centric to one that is individually tailored and personalized to you and to your needs. And then that moves us on to what I really want to talk about, is human health data. Now, health data is arguably the most important and socially impactful industry in the world, clearly, but also in terms of data is certainly the largest and the most problematic opportunity within the data sphere. Unlike consumer and finance, where you have large international settlement systems which are interoperable, that create payments, transactions which are easily recorded, The human health data is the opposite of that. Both nationally, regionally, and internationally, systems are fragmented, systems are not interoperable, and they don't have the sort of rails that other industries have had. Plus, also, they have around here, around this whole sphere, a lot of ethics, privacy, anonymity, and regulation around the use of that data, which also needs to be, isn't a problem, but needs to be properly structured. Now, the human body, if you exclude brain functionality and sensory functionality, produces 147 gigabytes of data per day. And it's certainly the largest data source of any industry, of any function that we know in the world. 30% of all data being recorded in the world today is already healthcare, and that's growing substantially. So there already is, and across these range of activities, a huge amount of healthcare data being recorded. Whether that be population level data, secondary care within hospitals, primary care within GPs and doctors, pharmacy care, whole genomic sequencing, there's a lot of heart rate monitoring, there's health at home, digital health, health apps, and there's also a huge amount of wearables. So already there is a vast amount of health data being collected and aggregated. The slight danger with this is it's critical to know, before you start aggregating data, to know what is the question the data is answering. Because data for data's sake can be misleading and can be quite error-prone. So it's really very important, and we find hugely important to understand at the beginning what is the question our data will answer, and what is the value of that data, either commercially or to patients. And that's a critical question that I sometimes fear is not asked before these collections take place. So notwithstanding all the challenges, and notwithstanding the technology problems, the thing when I look at a picture like this is I start to ask the question to myself, is our healthcare and biological journey now a data problem? And if this can be connected, and if you can bring then the right generative learning processes to it, can we start to see the health breakthroughs, the drug development breakthroughs, and the treatment breakthroughs that we have seen in other industries? Will we start to see the personalization of medicine? Will we start to see the capital being brought out, the efficiency being brought out? If you think about how data and data manipulation has taken a huge amount of manual activities out of other industries, one starts to think possibly about the parallels and the equivalence that can be brought to the healthcare industry. Specifically at what we do today, we've decided to really focus on the secondary care part of the data, because you can't do it all, clearly. We do that because that's where our domain skills are, that's where our knowledge and capabilities are anchored. And also, critically, that is where our consumers do the bulk of their transactions. The bulk of the transactions, if you think about the equivalents to retail and finance, are done within a secondary care environment. And that's where you get the range of data that you see on this chart about interventions. And this is across all diseases. I'm picking out a few, putting together all of the laboratory tests, the biomarkers, all the lab results, all the treatment, the genetics data, transcriptomic data now, which is being collected, diagnosis, procedure outcomes, and then critically, all the notes, all the unstructured data, pathology reports which are written, multidisciplinary team notes which are written, clinical notes which are written. These are all unstructured data pools that come in vast quantities of PDFs. So one of the real skills we have and the innovations we bring is we work with each of our individual Foundation Trust hospitals with their data warehouse team to help put these together into single lines. Because coming back to the point about interoperability, I can tell you of one particular data partner of ours who've got 137 different data recording systems, of which have been layered and bought and purchased over 30 years, 70% of which are not interoperable. They're isolated and stranded. So we work closely with each trust to make sure we join all these up. We introduce our own large language models into their system so they can start to read and extract all that valuable data out of the unstructured report, so that you start to make sense of this complexity. Now, the real value within the UK and within the UK hospitals, and the reason we focus on hospitals is because they have the patients, they have the consumers who are transacting, is to be able to find these very, very long-dated treatment pathways and all the information that drops upon them. And also, the critical thing that we're able to eliminate, which is the enemy of data, which is gaps, things that don't exist that should, that somehow need to be papered over. And the second one is age. Health data, once it becomes 3 years old, 4 years old, 5 years old, starts to deteriorate in its impact and its value. So being able to do this with no gaps in real time is a critical part of what we do. So we're seeing now a significant amount of industry adoption. We take this data and the insights of this data, and we help a whole range of large global pharma companies and biotechs start to do something that they're very interested in, and that is creating personalized medicines, delivering personalized drugs, this word that we've seen in other industries, tailored to individual diseases, to individual genetic subgroups, to certain oncology that are of a certain genetic characteristic. And we've done extraordinary work this year already across ovarian cancer, endometrial cancer, lung cancer, colorectal cancer, multiple myeloma, including other rare diseases and respiratory diseases as well. So we are seeing significant adoption for the value of this data as the industry starts to look at trying to develop more personalized, effective treatments. So dare we dream and say, we've seen this in the consumer industry, we've seen it in the finance industry. Can we imagine that this is beginning to happen, where we'll see, instead of having an industry that is product-centric and platform-centric, we start to see something that is much more individual and tailored to the patient and his particular therapy requirements. I think we are, and we are now beginning to demonstrate that at scale, which is a terrific, exciting place to be. Thank you very much.
The Harley Street Health District, the home of healthcare since 1860.